the rugged hills of western Pennsylvania, where the trees crowd together like silent sentinels and the mist clings heavy to the black soil, there once existed a place no map dared to name. They called it Thornwick Vale. Not a town, not a hamlet, but a cluster of weathered cabins, a sagging mill, and a chapel with no cross. Its steeple lost to time. It rose from the ashes of the Civil War, a scar left to heal in shadow. Some whispered it was a sanctuary for the lost, others a haven for the forsaken. But the truth cuts deeper than either. For what transpired, there was no mere neglect or hardship. It was ritual. It was silence. It was sacrifice. Before we step into this tale, I want you to pause. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let the air settle in your lungs, because what you're about to hear is not a bedtime story or a piece of folklore softened by the passing years. It is not the kind of tale people share to entertain. It is the kind they avoid telling at all. What I hold in my hands is a truth that was never meant to be spoken aloud. A truth carefully hidden beneath layers of silence and deliberate omission. This is no invention of my mind, no twisting of a fable to suit my own ends. The events you're about to hear are stitched into reality, though history has tried its best to pretend otherwise. Somewhere in the official records and polished accounts, there should have been a place for it. But there isn't. What happened in Thornwick Vale was not forgotten, it was erased. If you've come here seeking comfort, turn back now. If you want reassurance that the world is kind and fair, that justice always finds its way, stop listening. This is not that kind of story. This is a story for those who believe the past matters, even when it hurts. For those who believe that the dead deserve a voice, even if it trembles when spoken. For those who understand that silence, while it can be peaceful, can also be a prison. The people who lived in Thornwick Vale over a century ago are gone. Their homes have rotted, their graves have sunk into the earth, and their names, most of them, are lost to time. But some truths refuse to stay buried. Some memories rot slower than bone. And if you stay with me, you may be the first in over 100 years to know what truly happened there. What befell this small Pennsylvania town was not an accident, not a natural tragedy that swept through and faded away. It was something darker, born from the customs of its time, rooted in the way people once believed life should be lived and ended. It is a story that challenges the comfortable idea that the past was simpler or better. So before we begin, I want something from you. I want to know where you are as you hear this. Are you in your kitchen, a cup of coffee cooling beside you? Are you driving home, the road stretching endlessly in the dark? Are you lying in bed, the glow of your screen the only light in the room? Wherever you are, leave a trace of your presence. Share in the comments where you're listening from, because this isn't just a story about Pennsylvania. This silence, the kind that hides pain so deeply it becomes part of the culture, exists everywhere. It stretches into every corner of the world, into every place where cruelty once wore the mask of tradition. Let us turn to the spring of 1999, when a logging crew was clearing a collapsed cabin on private woodland near Clearfield County. The structure was a ruin. Timbers rotted, roof caved, foundation crumbling to dust. But beneath a floorboard, buried under ash and spider silk, they uncovered something peculiar. A scrap of soot-stained linen, folded thrice, wrapped around a brittle twig, and bound with black thread. It seemed insignificant, a relic of no value. Yet when unfurled, it revealed a map or something akin to one. Jagged lines, uneven circles, numbers without meaning, paths that veered from any known trail. At its heart, a rough sketch of a gnarled oak, and beneath it, a single name, Lila. Authorities dismissed it as a child's doodle. The land was slated for a lumber contract, and the cloth was archived, forgotten. That is, until 2011, when a doctoral student, Clara Hensley, stumbled upon the document while researching post-war land claims in rural Pennsylvania. It wasn't the map that gripped her. It was the fabric's texture, not wool or hemp, but something denser, smoother, with faint stitches along the edges whispering, "For the lost, for the remembered." She traced the deed back to 1867, a government grant awarded to a group of Civil War widows, 29 women who had lost husbands to Union and Confederate battles alike. Led by a midwife named Esther Vale, they petitioned for this isolated plot near a forgotten creek bend. Their intent was clear: a community for women like them, free of men, free of oversight, a place to survive. They named it Thornwick Vale, a nod to the thorny resilience of their grief. They erected cabins, tilled gardens, and kept to themselves. A few local papers dubbed it a widow's retreat, but most never knew it existed. Then, sometime after 1873, they vanished from all records, not dead, not relocated, simply gone. No census, no graves, no trace, save for fleeting rumors. Some travelers merely passed through Thornwick Vale with nothing to report. Just another quiet, out-of-the-way place. But every so often, someone would speak of strange things they had seen, moments so unsettling they lingered long after they'd left. One man recalled walking along the dirt road when he noticed a group of children playing near the edge of the forest. They were barefoot, their feet pale and raw from the cold ground, yet they did not flinch. Stranger still, when he called out to one of them, they all turned, every single face, at the sound of one name, Thorn. No matter which child he addressed, they reacted as if it belonged to them. Another traveler swore he had glimpsed women moving together in the fading light, each one draped in the same coarse brown cloak. They walked in perfect unison, murmuring under their breath in a rhythm that felt too precise to be casual conversation. He could not make out the words, but the sound clung to him like a whisper in the back of his skull for weeks afterward. For years, such accounts were dismissed as rural folklore, stories travelers told to give their journeys color. That was until Clara found the map. It was old, hand-drawn, and brittle, marked with symbols that didn't appear on any official record. In the margin, one place had been circled again and again, a thicket of hawthorn trees on the outskirts of the vale. Driven by curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, Clara followed the map. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their twisted branches clutching at the sky. Beneath them lay something unusual: 5 massive foundation stones, weathered but still holding their shape, arranged in a perfect crescent. No walls, no roof, no relics to suggest a structure had once stood there. Just those stones, as if the building they had supported had been erased deliberately, piece by piece. Clara crouched in the middle of the formation, running her fingers across the ground. That's when she noticed it. The soil felt different, softer, looser than the surrounding earth. It hadn't been disturbed recently enough to leave a visible mark, but Clara's instinct told her this place had been touched far more recently than its abandoned state suggested. She dug just enough to take a sample of the soil, placing it carefully into a sealed bag. Weeks later, when the analysis came back, her hands trembled as she unfolded the report. It was not just soil. Mixed into the dark earth were the remains of something that should never have been there. Bone fragments, small, fragile, unmistakably infant-sized, scattered throughout, along with traces of lime, ash, and clay. Lime, she knew, was once used to hasten the decomposition of flesh. Ash could only mean burning, and the clay, perhaps to cover it all, to hide the truth beneath a thin layer of normalcy. Whatever had happened in Thornwick Vale had been deliberate, and whoever had done it had intended for no one to ever know. She presented her findings to the county archive. The report was sealed within days. 2 weeks later, an unsigned letter arrived in a plain envelope. Inside, a yellowed page read, "The oak isn't the center, it's the shroud. Dig east." At the bottom, in the same shaky hand as the map, a name: Lila, age 8. How could a child's name from 1867 appear on a letter in 2011 unless someone or something never left? Unless memory, like sorrow, doesn't decay but lingers, waiting. To grasp Thornwick Vale, you must unlearn the tales of war's end. Peace did not follow Appomattox for the women left behind. By 1867, Pennsylvania was a patchwork of charred fields, ruined churches, and unmarked graves. The Union marched on, the Confederacy crumbled, but for these widows, there was no banner to mourn under. They were neither heroes nor victims, just remnants. Some remarried, some drifted to poorhouses, but 29, under Esther Vale's guidance, chose a different path. They claimed this rugged land, untended and remote, with a spring and enough seclusion to vanish. Together, they signed the founding pact of Thornwick Vale. No men, no clergy, no outsiders, only women, only children. They built what they could from salvaged wood, stitched quilts from tattered uniforms, and subsisted on wild berries until their crops took root. In the scant letters Esther wrote to her cousin in Ohio that first year, she described a sanctuary woven from loss. She spoke of nights so quiet you could hear the creek's pulse, of children too young to grasp their father's absence, and of a rule voted into being. No mention of husbands, no flags, no God unless he dwelled in the roots. By the second year, they had raised 5 cabins, a shared storeroom, and what Esther's letters cryptically called the Hollow, a circular shelter of gray stone with burlap-draped windows. No plans survived, only a line from her journal. If the heart must weep, let the soul find rest. Outsiders were turned away. Men were forbidden. Even relief workers were politely refused. Thus, Thornwick Vale remained unseen, unrecorded, until the itinerant preacher arrived. His name was Elias Crow, though some knew him as Preacher Elm. A silver-tongued man with a cart laden with hymns, herbal tonics, and a voice like embers on damp wood. He sought shelter from a sudden storm in the winter of 1872. The women allowed him one night in the storeroom, but he lingered past the thaw. He promised to ease the children's grief, claiming visions from the battlefields of Gettysburg. He vowed to purge the past from their spirits. Esther opposed him. Others wavered. By spring, a few women adopted brown cloaks sewn from old grain sacks. They prayed with Crow at dusk beneath the oak at the settlement's heart. They painted odd runes on their doors. The children were taught to whisper, to shed their given names. "You are not what war left," Crow intoned. "You are what rises after." The community fractured. Half stood with Esther. The other half followed Preacher Elm. The last letter from Esther, dated August 14th, 1873, trembled with a single line. "They took Lila's name today." After that, silence. No more letters, no sightings, no taxes, no births, no deaths. Just a settlement fading into oblivion. But the story of Thornwick Vale didn't end with Clara's discovery. It would resurface decades later, in 1982, under circumstances no one could have predicted. That summer, a wildfire tore through the dense timberland roughly 5 miles from the known site of Thornwick. The fire burned hot and fast, devouring acres of dry brush and leaving the earth blackened. Fire crews worked around the clock to contain it, and in the days that followed, rangers combed through the charred trail networks to assess the damage. It was during one of these surveys that a park ranger spotted something unusual along a logging road. A flat surface, half buried in wet, ash-mixed mud. It was not a natural stone. Pulling at the edges, the ranger uncovered a slab, heavy and rectangular, clearly shaped by human hands. At first, it looked like an old grave marker or boundary stone, but as he wiped away soot and dirt, letters began to emerge. The inscription was fractured, as if pieces had been chipped away deliberately, but enough remained to read. The first daughters of the new order were never born. They were reshaped. The words sent a chill through the ranger. It sounded ceremonial, almost ritualistic, yet there was something deeply sinister about the phrasing. Who or what were these first daughters? And what did it mean to be reshaped? Beneath the main inscription, in a smaller, almost hurried script etched in a rust-red pigment, another line appeared. "Thornwick is the name you lose before you fade." The pigment wasn't paint. Subsequent tests suggested it had been mixed with an iron-rich substance, possibly even blood, though that could never be proven definitively. Locals who heard about the slab spoke of an old practice they called the naming rite. But unlike christenings or coming-of-age ceremonies, this was no celebration. Accounts were scarce, but whispers suggested that losing one's name in Thornwick was a form of erasure, a deliberate stripping away of identity until nothing of the original self remained. The phrase "never born" took on a more disturbing meaning. It wasn't that these first daughters had never existed, it was that their existence, as they were, had been denied. They were not permitted to live as themselves. Instead, they were molded, altered, reshaped into something that fit the designs of the so-called New Order. That same year, the slab disappeared from the ranger station where it had been stored. No official investigation was launched, and the report in which it was recorded was quietly filed away. Some believe it was stolen. Others think it was reclaimed by those who still held to Thornwick's hidden customs, ensuring its words would not spread further. Yet the fire had done more than uncover a stone. It had reignited a story long buried. The strange children, the cloaked women, the disturbed soil, and now, this chilling inscription. Piece by piece, Thornwick Vale's erasure was coming undone. No cakes, no songs, just a line of children standing barefoot in a circle of ash, heads bowed, awaiting their unmaking. And so, dear listener, the stage is set for a tale where grief turns to ritual, where innocence becomes a weapon, and where a child's memory fights to endure. Join me as we descend into the hollow of Thornwick Vale, where the past was not forgotten, but forged anew. The naming began 6 months after Elias Crow settled into Thornwick Vale. By then, half the women had traded their patched dresses for the brown cloaks he provided, sewn from burlap and stained with creek mud. They shed their surnames, addressing each other only as sister or keeper. When they spoke of a higher power, they used a new title, the Weaver of the Second Thread. Crow preached that the war had shattered America not just in flesh but in spirit, and only through a rebirth of memory could the nation be mended child by child. A true land, he said, is not built on borders or banners but on a rewritten past. He started with the youngest, those too small to cling to their old names. They were led into the hollow, the circular stone shelter Esther Vale had built as a sanctuary for mourning. Under Crow's hand, it became something else. The burlap windows were sealed with pitch-black tar, the floor etched with a spiral pattern no one admitted to carving. At its center stood a copper bell, its surface dulled by time, resting on a simple wooden stand. One by one, the children entered. Crow would murmur for hours, his voice a soft drone no one outside could decipher. When they emerged, they moved differently, eyes downcast, steps synchronized, no longer answering to their birth names. When asked, they recited a single phrase, "I am not what fell. I am what grows." Older children resisted, so Crow devised the silent vigil. They sat in a ring around the oak, hands folded, waiting as he called out names. A flinch, a tear, a whisper. Any reaction meant removal. Those taken aside returned days later, hair shorn to the scalp, shoes replaced with rough sandals, voices altered. They claimed no memory of the vigil, and soon the others stopped reacting, not from courage, but because the past slipped away. We know this not from journals or ledgers. There were none, but from a single clue. A strip of brown fabric found in 1999, tucked into the hem of the map beneath the cabin floor. Scrawled in charcoal on the fabric were 19 names, fragments as if recalled in fragments. Lila, Elsie, Tom, Grace, Abe, Nell, Jessa, Finn, Hattie, Sam. Below them, a shaky line. "These are the names they stole. I wrote them to keep breathing." The stitches, uneven and spaced over time, suggested a desperate act of preservation. Perhaps days, perhaps years. When Esther Vale tried to intervene, she was stripped of her counsel role. Her cabin was torched, and she was branded unwoven Crow's term for those who rejected the process. A month later, her daughter Lila, 8 years old, was taken to the hollow. She returned changed and not alone. That was when the Thorn children appeared. Always in pairs, never more, never less. They stood side by side, mirroring each other with eerie precision. They wore identical brown tunics with thorn-stitched collars, hair cut straight across the forehead. They rarely blinked, and when they spoke, it was in unison. One beginning, the other finishing, then a synchronized nod. Crow introduced them at a dusk gathering as the first roots of the new weave. They were not born, he declared, but shaped. From then on, the Thorn children served as watchers, enforcers, guardians of the renamed. Every whispered old name, every hidden trinket from before, drew their silent presence. They appeared at cabin doors, beneath the oak, at a child's bedside. No touch needed, just their gaze eroding memory. One girl, Elsie, tried to flee after being told her name was a stain of the old thread. She slipped through the northern fence line one night, reaching a mile into the pine thicket. Searchers found her 2 days later, the Thorn children behind her. Her eyes were open but unseeing, her voice gone. The children learned a silent game of survival. Never speak of before, never trace names in the dirt, never ask where the Thorns slept, and above all, never approach the mirror oak, the gnarled tree at the hollow's edge, its bark smooth and reflective like warped glass. The Thorn children lingered near it, some saying it was their cradle, others a threshold. One boy, Finn, stood too close once. He claimed his reflection moved out of sync, reaching toward him. He clawed at the bark, tearing his hands, and was taken to the hollow the next day. He never returned, but 2 new Thorn children emerged. Twins, some whispered, or perhaps Finn split apart. No one dared ask. In 1997, a surveying team mapping Civil War trails in Clearfield County found a perfect circular depression, 18 feet wide, barren of growth. At its center, a charred oak stump, burned from within, its surface mirror-like. Embedded in its base were 2 child-sized handprints, identical. Soil tests later revealed mercury, burned fabric, and DNA from at least 3 children under 10. No graves, no bones, just a note. Preserved not in flesh, but in form. The Thorn children were more than reflections, they were replacements. If the spiral carvings and mercury traces hold truth, they weren't meant to remember but to overwrite. It was a cold April morning in 1876 when a girl appeared, barefoot, at St. Agnes Church in Indiana County, 50 miles east. Mud-streaked and silent, she clutched a strip of brown cloth. Her eyes were red-rimmed, lips split, whispering Lila. No older than 9, her collarbone sharp under a thorn-stitched tunic, seems reinforced with what looked like hair. The congregation assumed she was a runaway from an orphanage, but when Reverend Paul Harrow asked her name, she said, "I am what was taken." Grace didn't stay. She spoke in fragments. "Names are threads. They burned ours. You go in the hollow. You come out now. I saw her sew the map. I saw her hide it under the broken beam. The oak has 2 sides. One hides, one hears." Harrow recorded every word. At night, she scratched spirals into the rectory walls with a splinter. During services, she hummed a droning tone that made teeth ache. She never cried, until asked, "Where is your mother?" Then her hands trembled, and she dropped the cloth. Stained with soot, it bore a spiral, a crescent, and initials, LVR Lila Violet Rowe. The elders sent it to authorities, who labeled it a traumatized orphan's delusion. Grace was placed in the Laurel Ridge home near Altoona. She lasted 10 days. On the 11th morning, her bed was empty. No struggle, no tracks, just a carving beneath. "They come in pairs. The oak hums. Do not speak your name." Her story ended there, but her voice lingered. In 2004, a historian, Mark Ellis, found Harrow's notes in the church archive. One sketch depicted a cabin clearing, soft ground with runes, a trapdoor. A girl drew with charcoal, mouth sewn shut. Below, in tiny script, "She's still down there. Her names are under the floor." The cabin matched the 1999 site. Grace's escape cracked the veil. She carried Lila's memory when no one else could. And for a moment, the world glimpsed Thornwick's truth. But the hollow waited, and the Thorn children watched. This is where we pause, dear listener, as the roots of this tale deepen. Stay with me as we uncover what lies beneath, where memory was not lost, but remade. Beneath Thornwick Vale lay a place they never named in sermons or chants, a silence deeper than the hollow itself. The Thorn children called it the Deep Root, a shadowed chamber where those who couldn't forget were sent. Carved under what had been Widow Clara's grain cellar, it began as a storage pit but transformed under Elias Crow's vision. No doors marked its entrance, only a rope ladder lowered through a trapdoor hidden beneath cedar ash and packed straw. The descent took nearly a minute, long enough for the copper bell's hum to fade into nothingness. Inside, no light pierced the gloom save for the faint glow of phosphorescent moss clinging to the walls. The children were kept in low cells, hollows dug from clay and braced with bone lattice and splintered timber. Each slept on a cot of woven corn husk and wire, unbound yet still. The air was thin, charged with a presence that seemed to listen. Some whispered the walls moved, the spiral carvings on the floor shifting with each forgotten name. A girl named Nell once murmured, "It's not a root, it's a vein," before she was taken. Her words hinted at something growing, not buried. Each day, the children received one relic from their past: a shoe, a ribbon, a shard of mirror, and were told to hold it until it meant nothing. When they released it without hesitation, they were deemed ready. But Lila never let go. With stolen soot and chewed twigs, she scratched maps beneath her cot, not of the surface, but of tunnels leading to the creek, the widow's grove, a pit marked by a hollow stump. How she evaded detection remains unknown, but one day the Thorn children descended and found her cot empty, save for a handprint, a spiral, and a stitched phrase, "The soft floor breathes." In 1999, when forestry crews unearthed the Widow Clara site, they found a narrow shaft beneath a ruined floorboard. Oxygen thinned the deeper they went, and 2 workers fainted before the dig was halted. But before it closed, Helena Croft, a grad student, captured a photograph. The shaft's walls bore faint spirals, and at the bottom, an empty cot with "Still Here" scrawled in ash above it. The deep root wasn't just punishment. It was where memory was unthreaded, where a new order was sown. The truth surfaced in fragments. In 1953, a woman was admitted to the Pine Ridge Asylum in Ohio, found wandering near a rail depot outside Pittsburgh. She carried no papers, her hair cropped short, clad in a brown robe with uneven seams. Estimated at 85, she insisted she was 8, calling herself Lila. Dr. Margaret Lowe, the attending psychiatrist, noted her obsessive drawing spirals, crescents, oaks without roots. Her speech was disjointed. "The bell says no. The root says nothing. I am now. I am still." Lowe diagnosed schizophrenia, but one night, during a rare lucid moment, Lila whispered to a nurse, "The back of the root has no end. It's a fold, and they fall through it, the ones who speak their names." She claimed a boy named Tom entered, said Thomas, and vanished, leaving only his sandals. When pressed, she clawed her arms raw and was moved to a secure ward, silent until her death in 1960. Her 62 sketches, digitized in 2010 by an intern, showed a circular chamber, 5 hanging fabrics, a spiral floor, and a girl with a sewn mouth. Each was captioned, "Drawn by Lila V. 1953. No kin." What was the deep root? A tool of control, a void for identity, or something darker? A forge for the soul? By 1875, 28 of 29 children had been renamed, reassigned roles in the second thread. Only Lila resisted, leaving maps as her defiance. Her escape attempt in 1876, like Grace's, cracked the veil. She reached St. Agnes, her cloth map a testament. But the deep root's reach extended beyond Thornwick. In 1981, a letter surfaced in a trunk auctioned in Harrisburg, addressed to Dr. Elias Brandt, Institute for National Renewal, Philadelphia. Signed by Crow, it read, "The trial at Site 4 Thornwick Vale succeeds. The children adapt to memory revision, especially under widow guidance. The root outstrips the hollow. We may encode a new lineage. Prepare Site 7 for transfer." The letter, with "From Fracture Union" underlined twice, matched inscriptions found in 1885 at a closed orphanage in Delaware and 1929 under a raised mission in Vermont. A coded ledger listed initials: LV, Lila Violet, at level 5 deviant; GJ, Grace Jemima, at level 4 compromised; SC at level 1 thorn ready. The ledger vanished from archives in 1999. The weak researcher Tom Ridley disappeared near Clearfield. His last note read, "What if there were more thorns?" Crow's letter wasn't a confession. It was a blueprint. Thornwick wasn't isolated. It was a prototype. In 1912, an old man, Sergeant Elias Reed, resided at Cedar Rest Home near Erie. He muttered in his sleep. The children moved like shadows. The keepers never wept. The oak hummed in two voices. A journalist, Helen Marsh, recorded him saying, "We thought it a rebel camp, found women with hollow eyes, kids who didn't flinch. They called it the second thread. Said the old nation broke. Ours would grow from forgetting." He described a split oak, one side green, one ash, and collapsed during a 1913 trek to retrace it, gasping, "She drew herself out, but we buried her path." He died days later. Marsh's 1916 manuscript, The Second Thread, Memories Unraveling, was suppressed, but a copy emerged in 1990 in Maine. Its margin read, "Some forgot, some drew. The thorns didn't just obey, they learned." And Lila, like Maddie, remembered enough to leave a trace. In 1995, 3 students, Rachel Holt, Daniel Pierce, and Sophie Lane, ignored site restrictions, following Lila's map to a split oak stump. Beneath it, a 3-foot iron hatch bolted shut. They pried it open, revealing a chamber lined with white clay, walls covered in tiny black handprints, some with spirals. Inside the door, "Do not close" was scratched. Rachel urged reporting it. Daniel insisted it was a sensory cell for breaking memory. Sophie noted, "If you close it, they stop singing." They resealed it, but returning with permits. The hatch was gone, ground smoothed. That night, Sophie woke to "Do not close" on her mirror in charcoal. The chamber had waited, and perhaps wasn't for children alone. The state declared Thornwick dissolved in 1879. No intervention noted. But on October 12th, a trapper, Amos Reed, saw a girl in a white shift knee-deep in Clear Creek. Hands sooty, mouth scarred with Msr, Lila's initials. She tapped a spoon 3 times at 3:07 a.m., looped rope around her wrists, and vanished, leaving a spiral on the wall. Smoke rose from the hills days later, revealing burned huts and a pit of thorn-stitched robes. A chapel wall bore, "We undid the thread. We burned the thorns. No more will rise." Yet Lila's memory endured. This tale deepens, dear listener. Stay with me as we unearth what the deep root hid, and what still echoes. The rituals of Thornwick Vale evolved in the spring of 1869, when the first outsiders arrived. 5 men in earth-toned cassocks, claiming to be from the Society for the Renewal of the Commonwealth, carried scrolls, wax-sealed satchels, and promises. Their letters bore a Union chaplain's signature, untraceable, but the widows, worn by grief and hunger, welcomed them. They needed order, a flicker of hope. The men offered a doctrine called the Second Thread, a rebirth of America not through steel or cannon but through memory's reclamation. Their creed was stark. The war fractured the nation by breaking families. To heal, children must be severed from their parents' pain, grief excised like a wound. The process began at dawn. A child was brought to the creek's fork, stripped, anointed with ash and salt, and asked, "Who claimed you?" A name earned 1 dunking, tears 2. Resistance meant surrender to the current. Those who stayed silent were chosen, given names like Reed, Hush, Shade, words stripped of history. A surviving fragment reads, "From water we unweave memory, from ash we rebind the soul. The child who forgets leads." Signed with a triple spiral and EC. Elias Crow, some say, or a darker cipher, Eternal Cut. By late 1869, the rites intensified. Blindfolded, children walked ashfields, calling "Mother," met with silence, then told, "Now you are free." Those labeled remnants vanished, their fate unmarked. Lila's map sketched a box near the East Ridge, noting, "Where they bury names that didn't forget." In 2012, Dr. Nora Ellis, a trauma psychologist at a Vermont college, received a sealed package with no sender. Inside, a 68-page manuscript, The Thread Protocol, internal use only, detailed a 19th century method to dismantle a child's memory. It outlined 4 phases: unnaming, stripping names, mirrors, and attachment language; sleep severance, using rhythmic taps or water sounds to erase dream ties; echo reversal, repeating false memories until true, with punishment for deviation; final spiral, drawing a clockwise spiral for compliance, counterclockwise for resistance, the latter burned; compliant spirals were sealed in wax as threadless. Signed EC. It noted, "Grief is the last tie to origin. Sever it, and the nation begins." Dr. Ellis linked it to a 1975 Canadian sleep disruption study, a 1983 U.S. military program on refugee children, and a 2001 Missouri youth camp using spiral therapy, unconnected yet echoing. Her 2013 lecture, Inherited Thread, drew 25 attendees, most dismissing it as allegory. But an Arkansas nurse handed her a 1999 photo. A girl found under a floorboard, thigh marked with a clockwise spiral in blood, scratched, "I was shade by me." In 2019, a state-funded dig at Thornwick, led by Dr. Lena Carver, uncovered a sealed crawl space under the chapel ruin. Inside, an iron cylinder held a wax-sealed audio reel, dated 1872. Restoration yielded a child's whisper. "They said I'd leave if I forgot her name. I said her name was the creek. I said her name was the spiral. They made me dig where the thorns sang loudest. Then they buried the ones who remembered. I wrote it with the coal mama gave me. If you found my map, you remember too." A pause, a wet cough. Then, "We weren't the first, Thornwick. We were just the first with a name." Background hums. Other children, perhaps, faded as the reel ended. Dr. Carver released a partial transcript, but the grant was revoked within weeks under the 1998 Pennsylvania Heritage Preservation Act. Footage seized. An intern leaked her report. Thornwick wasn't erased. It was distilled. The spirals, the doctrine, the methods rebranded. Not in soil now, but in schools stripping names, camps teaching silence, homes calling trauma order. Her final line, "Lila's spiral isn't a relic. It's a pattern. Someone draws it again." That week, a clockwise spiral appeared under a youth center desk in Ohio. Asked, the child said, "It's what they make you draw when you don't cry." The audio's echo surfaced in 2008, when a fragment, 3 minutes, 7 seconds, uploaded to an online forum captured the hum, a whisper. She drew the spiral with her knees, and those taps. Dr. Alice Marsh, a folklorist, analyzed it with a spectral mic in 2013. Slowed, the hum formed a chant. Unrecognizable syllables, save motherless, repeated. That night, she cut her hand on a stone shard, blood spiraling on a tile before vanishing. By morning, she was gone. Her recorder left with, "They remember through the floor. They sing what we forget." The site was reburied, footage locked. In 1877, a fire razed Thornwick, leaving burned huts and a pit of thorn-stitched robes. A chapel wall bore, "We severed the thread. We burned the thorns. No more will grow." Called the Night of No Names, some saw suicide, others a purge. But a 1910 margin note in Marsh's manuscript read, "LCR survived. She didn't escape." In 1996, a contractor, Paul Hensley, cleared a stone floor at Widow's Hollow. A tile bled red, revealing spiral scratches. At 3:07 a.m., a hum and children's voices sang "Motherless." Blood on the tile spiraled, then receded. The project halted. The Thorn children were the keepers of Thornwick Vale's new order, their dominion tightening with each passing season. Always in pairs, they moved with a synchronized grace that unnerved even the most steadfast. Dressed in brown tunics with thorn-stitched collars, their hair cropped blunt, they rarely blinked, their gazes piercing yet vacant. They spoke in tandem, one starting, the other completing, then nodding as if bound by an unseen thread. Elias Crow hailed them as the first roots of the second thread. Forged not born, their purpose to enforce the unmaking. They shadowed the settlement, appearing at cabin thresholds, beneath the mirror oak, or at a child's bedside, their presence alone unraveling memory. Defiance drew their watch. A girl named Hattie whispered her old name after a naming rite and found the thorns outside her door that night, silent sentinels until she forgot. A boy, Sam, hid a locket under his cot. They stood by until he surrendered it, his eyes glazing over. They never touched, never spoke beyond their paired chants, yet their effect was absolute. The children learned to erase themselves, never mention before, never sketch names, never ask where the thorns rested. The unspoken rule: avoid the mirror oak, its bark a warped mirror where reflections moved independently. Hattie once lingered too long, seeing her face twist. She clawed the bark, bloodying her hands, and vanished into the hollow. 2 new thorns appeared, twin-like, perhaps Hattie divided. In 1998, a geological survey near Clearfield uncovered a 20-foot barren ring. Its center a charred oak stump with mirror-sheen bark. 2 child-sized handprints were pressed into its base, identical. Soil analysis revealed mercury, burned fabric, and DNA from 5 children under 12. No burials, just a note. Preserved in echo, not earth. The thorns weren't mere reflections. They were replacements designed to overwrite the past. A letter from Crow to Dr. Brandt in 1878 hinted at this. The thorn pairs model the new lineage. Site 8 awaits replication. The oak hums their birth. Survivors carried the tale forward. In 1877, after the Night of No Names, a boy named Reed stumbled into St. Paul's Mission in Erie, mud-caked, clutching a thorn-stitched cloth. His eyes were hollow, lips cracked, murmuring Lila. No older than 10, he wore a tunic with hair-sewn seams. Asked his name, he said, "I am what was taken." Sam didn't hold. He spoke in fragments. Names are threads. They cut ours. The hollow takes. I saw her map the route. The oak lies. It hears. A priest, Father James Holt, recorded it. Reed scratched spirals on the walls, hummed a drone that ached in the teeth, and trembled at "Where's your mother?" dropping the cloth with a spiral, crescent, and LVR. Authorities called him a war orphan's delusion, sending him to Oakwood Home. He vanished on day 9, leaving "They come in pairs." The oak hums. Silence your name carved beneath his bed. In 2005, Holt's notes resurfaced, including a sketch. A clearing, soft ground with runes, a trapdoor, a girl drawing with a sewn mouth, captioned, "She's still below. Her name's Hyde." It matched the 1999 site. Reed's escape, like Grace's and Lila's, pierced the veil, his cloth a lifeline to Lila's memory. Another witness emerged in 1965. An old woman, calling herself Shade, was found near Altoona, 87 but claiming 8. In a brown robe, she drew spirals obsessively. Dr. Helen Pierce noted her whispers. The root folds. Tom fell through saying his name. The oak sings 2 tones. She died in 1972. Her 48 sketches, circles, 5 fabrics, a spiral floor, a sewn mouth girl, captioned Shade L. 1965. No family. Her legacy suggested the thorn's reach endured. In 2014, a historian, Emily Voss, found an 1879 letter from Crow to a Vermont site, proposing thorn seeding across 5 locations, its motto from fracture, union matching inscriptions in closed institutions. The resolution came in fragments. In 2000, a dig at Widow's Hollow, authorized by the Pennsylvania Historical Society, hit a sealed chamber under the chapel. Inside, a 4-foot iron box, its lid etched with "Do Not Seal." The walls bore hundreds of black handprints, some with spirals. A recorder, left running, captured a hum at 3:07 a.m. Children's voices singing "Motherless" in unison. Dr. Rachel Kern, leading the dig, noted blood on a tile spiraling before vanishing. She whispered into the mic, "They sing through the earth," then disappeared. The site was closed, audio seized, but a leak in 2009 shared 3 minutes, 7 seconds ending with 3 spoon taps. In 2020, a child at a Pennsylvania reform school drew a clockwise spiral, saying, "They made me when I didn't cry." Tests linked her DNA to 1998 stump samples. The pattern persisted. Dr. Carver's leaked report warned, the thorns weren't destroyed, they evolved. Lila's spiral guides them still. On August 3, 2025, a hiker near Clearfield found a split oak, one side green, one ash, with a cloth scrap, alvear, a spiral. The root breathes. The hum followed. Thornwick's thread weaves on, dear listener. The thorns watch. Stay with me as we face its end. The thread of Thornwick Vale tightened in the fall of 2021, when a team from the University of Pennsylvania, led by Dr. Emily Voss, received clearance to revisit Widow's Hollow. The site, long sealed under the 1998 Preservation Act, yielded to pressure from historians tracking post-war anomalies. Armed with Lila's digitized map and spectral recording gear, they aimed to pierce the silence. On October 15th, beneath the chapel's scorched foundation, they uncovered a stone slab, its surface etched with a triple spiral. Beneath it, a narrow shaft descended into darkness, the air thick with the scent of clay and ash. The team lowered a camera, revealing a chamber 6 feet square, its walls lined with white clay and marked by hundreds of black handprints, some smudged, some precise. At the center, a rusted iron frame held a cot, its husk mattress intact. Above it, scratched in charcoal, were the words, "Still here." Dr. Voss, descending with a recorder, noted a hum at 3:07 a.m., children's voices chanting "Motherless" in eerie harmony. As she traced a handprint, her finger bled, the blood spiraling across the wall before sinking in. She gasped into the mic, "There in the stone," then froze as the hum shifted to a whisper. She drew the root. The team pulled her up, but that night, Voss vanished. Her final audio, leaked online, ended with 3 spoon taps. The dig halted, the shaft resealed, yet a hiker reported a split oak nearby, its base wrapped in a cloth scrap, LVR a spiral. The root calls. The incident reignited whispers of Thornwick's living legacy. In 2022, a historian, Mark Hensley, uncovered a 1880 ledger in a Philadelphia archive, listing thread sites: Thornwick, Site 4, a Vermont orphanage, Site 7, a Rhode Island textile mill, Site 9, each with child mortality spikes. A note read, "Thorn seeding complete. Prepare Site 11. The ledger, signed EC, vanished days later. The confrontation came in 2023. A local, Sarah Reed, granddaughter of Amos Reed, the 1879 trapper, led a small group, herself, a folklorist Dr. Lena Marsh, and a sound engineer, Tom Carver, to the Split Oak site. Guided by Lila's map, they found the shaft reopened, its hatch ajar. Inside, the chamber pulsed with the hum, handprints glowing faintly. Sarah, clutching Amos's journal, read aloud. The girl by the creek stitched her name. The thorns burned, but the root remained. As they recorded, a child's voice emerged. Lila waited. We sing her back. The hum peaked, and 2 figures, thorn children, tunics intact, appeared, mirroring each other. They didn't advance but chanted, "You are now, you are thread." Tom's equipment spiked, capturing a layered chant, syllables forming "motherless" and "Lila lives." Sarah, reciting Lila's initials, felt the air shift. The thorns vanished, leaving a cloth with "Remember" stitched in. Dr. Marsh theorized the thorns were memory echoes, sustained by the deep roots ritual. The group sealed the shaft, marking it with a cross, but the hum lingered in their recordings, analyzed in 2024 as a frequency matching 1870s bell tones. Historical ties unraveled further. In 2025, a Massachusetts archive released a 1875 letter from Crow to a Boston institute, detailing mnemonic revision success at Thornwick, proposing a national thread across 12 sites. Cross-referenced with closed asylums and orphanages, it suggested a network erasing identity for a reborn America. A 1911 veteran, Corporal Elias Grant, recalled a Pennsylvania raid on a silent camp with spiral-carved posts, children in robes, and a humming oak, mirroring Reynolds's tale. His unit burned it, but he muttered, "The root took the names." Until his death in 1918, the end came quietly. On July 15, 2025, Sarah returned alone, leaving a locket, Lila's per Amos's notes, at the oak. That night, the hum ceased, replaced by a single child's laugh, then silence. A week later, the split oak fell, its roots exposing a clay box with 29 names. Lila, Grace, Hattie, Sam, carved in. Tested, the clay held no DNA, only ash and mercury, as if memory itself was interred. Dr. Marsh's 2025 paper, The Thread Unraveled, concluded, Thornwick was a test. The spiral persists, but Lila's remembrance broke it. The thread phrase, Dear listener, the thorns sleep, but the root waits. This tale closes, yet its echo remains. Thank you for bearing witness. The fall of the split oak in July 2025 marked not an end but a revelation. The hum that ceased that night reverberated beyond Clearfield County, hinting at a thread woven across continents. Dr. Lena Marsh, shaken by the 2023 encounter, turned to global archives, uncovering a network tied to Elias Crow's vision. In 2026, a British historian, Dr. Oliver Tate, found a 1882 letter in London's Victoria Archive, addressed to a Thread Council detailing Site 12 in Cornwall, a coastal hamlet where children vanished in 1885, leaving spiral-carved stones. The motto from Fracture, Union appeared, signed EC, matching Thornwick's ledger. In Australia, a 1890 report from Tasmania described a silent colony near Hobart, its children renamed Root, their graves marked with spirals. A 1923 Canadian record from Nova Scotia noted a burned orphanage, its walls etched with motherless, linking to a Philadelphia Institute donation. By 2027, 18 sites were identified: Pennsylvania, Vermont, Rhode Island, Cornwall, Tasmania, Nova Scotia, and beyond, each with child disappearances, spiral symbols, and humming anomalies. A leaked 1879 Crow Manifesto, The Weave of Nations, proposed a global thread to erase war scars, training Root children as memory's guardians. The deep root, it seemed, was no local aberration but a blueprint. The global thread's echo surfaced in modern shadows. In 2026, a Swedish youth center reported a child drawing clockwise spirals, claiming, "They make us when we forget." DNA linked to 1998 Clearfield samples. In Brazil, a 2025 dig near Sao Paulo uncovered a clay chamber with handprints, its audio capturing Motherless at 3:07 a.m. A Japanese researcher, Dr. Hiroshi Kato, found 1905 records of a Hokkaido village where children chanted in pairs, their teacher vanishing with a spiral note. By 2028, a UN task force, spurred by Marsh's findings, mapped 25 potential sites, each tied to post-conflict zones: Civil War, Boer War, Russo-Japanese War, suggesting a coordinated erasure. The silence broke in 2029. Sarah Reed, now leading a grassroots group, returned to Widow's Hollow with Tom Carver and a linguist, Dr. Aisha Patel. Armed with Lila's cloth and Amos's journal, they reopened the shaft. The chamber pulsed, handprints glowing. Patel's translator detected a language, untraceable, yet with Lila and Remember recurring. As Sarah recited the 29 names from the clay box, the hum fractured, and two thorn figures emerged, chanting, "You are Thread." Tom recorded a spike, capturing a child's voice. "She unmade us." The root breaks. The thorns dissolved into ash, leaving a spiral-carved stone with "End the Weave" etched. Analysis in 2030 revealed the stone's ash contained mercury and child DNA from multiple sites: Thornwick, Cornwall, Hokkaido, suggesting a shared origin. Patel theorized the thorns were psychic imprints, sustained by ritual energy, disrupted by collective remembrance. The UN declared the site's memory preserves, banning excavation. Yet, in 2031, a hiker in Oregon found a new split oak, its base marked LVR, a hum resuming. The thread, it seemed, adapted. Eternal silence loomed. In 2032, Dr. Marsh's final paper, The Global Unweaving, traced the thread to a 1868 Philadelphia meeting of war widow societies, infiltrated by Crow's Society. It proposed a new humanity via child reprogramming, funded by industrialists fearing unrest. A 1901 memo from Site 9 confirmed 300 children threaded across sites, their names archived in a lost vault. The 2029 ash suggested their essences merged, the thorns a collective will. Sarah's act, naming the lost, severed this link, but the root's resilience hinted at dormant seeds. On December 1st, 2033, a global broadcast played the 2029 recording, inviting listeners to speak the names. Millions joined, from Pennsylvania to Tokyo, their voices drowning the hum. That night, no taps sounded at 3:07 a.m. The UN sealed all sites, planting oaks over them, a memorial forest. Yet, in 2034, a child in France drew a spiral, whispering, "She waits." The thread frays, but its echo lingers. The weave unravels, dear listener. The thorns sleep, the root weakens. Thank you for witnessing its end. The last spiral appeared on March 17, 2035, etched in charcoal on a Pennsylvania school desk. The child, 9-year-old Emma Hart, said, "It came in a dream. A girl with a sewn mouth told me to draw." Tested, her DNA showed no Clearfield link, suggesting a cultural imprint. Dr. Patel, now leading the Memory Preservation Initiative, saw it as proof. The thread's energy persisted in memory, not flesh. The UN expanded the forest project, planting 29 oaks per site, each with a name plaque: Lila, Grace, Hattie, Sam, read aloud annually. In 2036, a vault was found in Philadelphia, its lock rusted, containing 300 wax-sealed envelopes, each with a spiral and a child's name: Lila Violet Rowe, Grace Jemima Holt, Thomas Elias Grant. Opened, they held ash, no DNA, but an 1879 log listed thread success rate, 87%. A final note, EC's hand, read, "The weave endures in silence. Break it with voice." Sarah Reed, now 60, led a global reading on July 15, 2037, naming all 300. That night, no hums, no taps, only silence. Archaeological reviews in 2038 confirmed site chambers empty, handprints fading. Dr. Marsh, retiring, wrote, "Lila's remembrance won. The thorns were echoes, not eternity." Yet, in 2039, a hiker near the original oak found a cloth scrap, LVR, a faded spiral, the root dreams. Analyzed, it held no ash, only soil. The thread, it seemed, had transformed into legend. On August 3, 2040, the memorial forest opened, 725 oaks standing silent. Sarah, speaking, said, "We gave them names. They gave us peace. The hum never returned." The last spiral, Emma's, was framed, a reminder. Thornwick Vale, once a wound, became a scar healed by voice. This tale ends, dear listener, but its lesson lives. Memory endures when spoken.